Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called Billy Bob's Space Trucker. There is a playlist listed down below with all previous chapters. Anyway, on to the story. Chapter 8. Butch Crusher Cross was staring at his mirror as he sat sideways doing curls, watching his muscles bulge. The trick was that he couldn't let himself get too beefy or too soft. He had to maintain the perfect level of being built in order to impress people, while still being reasonable enough to actually move his arms around like a normal human being. No one respected you if your muscles were so big that you couldn't wipe your own ass. Plus, coming from the military, he knew how to get properly fit in such a way that your strength was still useful in a combat scenario. He took care to work out his mental muscles as well. Keeping up on scientific journals, as well as reading the latest philosophical pieces, was part of his training. There was a special place in his heart for his workout time, though. It was sacred to him, the time of the day that he wasn't supposed to be bothered. That's, of course, when the door to his office opened up and one of his aides decided to bother him. "Mr. President?" "How urgent? Are we under attack? Do I need to go to the dodecahedron?" "No, sir, there's no meeting with the military just yet, but we've got an incoming transmission from the ambassador." Butch sighed out and shook his head. "What did Joe do now? Piss in the Chancellor's soup. I swear to God that yokel is the worst diplomat. How does he fuck up relationships with the UHG? The only other human nation there is." "No, sir, it's not Joe, it's our Xeno ambassador." Butch paused at that and looked confused. Last he remembered, America only had one ambassador, and that was the other humans. Our what? "Jerry, sir. You got pissed at him last Thanksgiving after that joke he made and made him our ambassador to Xenos." Butch nodded at that as he remembered what had happened. "He's still alive? Must be better at avoiding assassination than I figured." He tapped his chin for a moment. "Anyway, Jerry's an arsehole. Why are we interrupting my workout for some cry for help he's finally sending us?" "So that's just it. He isn't asking for help. He's found a species that wants to form an alliance with us." Butch arched his brows now, before they furrowed once more in confusion. "You mean the UHG, right? They just got a hold of the wrong guy." "No. They say they want to form an alliance with the American clan. It's a species that we've never heard of. They say that they've been marginalized and wrongfully punished by the galactic government, and we might be able to help them achieve independence and freedom." Butch looked truly surprised now. "I thought the galactic government was nothing but a bunch of happy space hippies that got pissed when we defended ourselves in the First Contact War. What are they talking about? Who even met them?" "Details are sketchy, sir, but I'm being told that one of the diplomats met an American and was so impressed that they told their leaders to seek us out for an alliance immediately. We can't track down the American yet. Apparently they're in trouble, and he's defending their diplomat." Butch was impressed. "Astounding. And who is this fine American?" He grabbed his American flag cloak. The Eagle standard sounded like he might need to hold a press conference soon. "Intelligence is on it, sir. Right now, all we know is that he's called
Billy Bob, Space Trucker."
"Viking Xenotech, why isn't there simply an Audi in port or something?" he mumbled as he looked over the security panel. It was clear no one had expected this sort of situation when building the station. The arena had just been a central cargo room, apparently, with dirt filled in to make it look more arena-like, apparently. So the outer cargo rooms hadn't been set up for security or keeping people imprisoned. He had opened the security panel and was trying to make sense of the options his translator was telling him were written in the various buttons. Then he groaned out as that awful voice came back on the PA. "What? How dare you survive? Freaky space clown god demands that you die and be sacrificed." "How the fuck do I shut him up?" Billy Bob angrily growled as he started to push buttons. But then he felt one of Emily's hands resting on him and looked back. Then he stood aside as she stepped up to the consoles. She was still shaken from what those scroll frogs had done to her with their bad dubstep, but clearly motivated. First she pulled the panel off the wall, getting to the wires behind it. Billy Bob watched her pull several free, twisting some and sticking them back into places, and hitting a few of the buttons on the panel hanging by the wires she was rearranging. "Billy Bob, what's your species' tolerable voltage level?" He looked at her for a moment and shrugged. "Fuck if I know." "Well, I'm hoping it's pretty high. I need you to plug that green cable into the blue port." He grabbed the cable, which looked a bit more like a teal to him, and looked at her. When she nodded, he jammed it into the blue port and then jerked a bit as his body tensed and he made a gurk sound. He let go for a moment and sniffed, then licked his lips. Now there is a funky taste. Emily pulled the panel off the wall completely then. All right, I've got access from the station for a while, and that jolt charged it for an hour or two. What are you? He was already putting out his Galactic Standard USB and plugging it in. Accessing the playlist through his implant, he scrolled down. As music began to play through the PA, he nodded and headed towards the door. Then he handed Emily his bat. He was going to need his guns for the fight to come. America! America! Emily followed behind him, opening as they approached. They were in another cargo room, but that room was connected to a main portion of the station he'd seen before. They were out in those big street-like corridors with shops and stalls. Just as they were taking stock of their position, and a song started to earnest. America! Feck yeah! Billy Bob was moving as quick jog when he saw 3 Borks round the corner. Their targeting computers working on a firing solution immediately. But Billy Bob didn't need any crap like that. He raised his M1911 and fired off 5 rounds. The Borks stood in plain sight, figuring their shields would protect them, but those were energy shields designed to stop energy weapons that were common across the galaxy. So the hollow points fired in the controlled explosion from his gun traveled at around 800 feet per second, slammed into their unprotected Xeno flesh. Their bodies were slammed back against the wall behind them as chunks of Xeno splattered across the surface. All in time to a resounding feck yeah. Bullshit, Billy Bob muttered as he watched what happened to Xenos hit by bullets designed on a high-gravity planet to stop Death Wielders did to the more common Xenos. That's fucking awesome. I bet a headshot would literally make their heads explode. He thought about trying it, and then remembered that he was very heavily outnumbered. Center shots were better then. He thought it over for a moment and ejected his magazine and pulled a new one free from his holster, slamming it into place. Still had one in the chamber and a fresh magazine. Taking a breath, he began to run forward as the song blared through the speakers around the station. He heard confused Borks asking what those explosions were. When he neared the corner, the 3 dead ones had come around. He quickly peeked and ducked back as he saw about 6 of them moving forwards down the street, around 40 yards down. Holstering his trusty handgun and unslung the Remington 2070 and gave it a quick kiss. Then he rounded the corner and lifted it to his shoulder, bracing as he pulled the trigger. The buckshot spewed forth, cutting down the 2 Borks on the edge, partially shredding their bodies. But Billy Bob wasn't done. He racked the slide, shifted his aim, and fired. Racked the slide, shifted, aim, fire. Racked the slide, shift, fire. In 4 shots, 6 of them were down. They were too shocked to get the targeting solution, let alone fire back. From behind him, he heard what he figured was the dismayed squawk. By the heavenly deity, what do you have in that thing? Like I said, it fires metal chunks at a few hundred feet per second, he said quickly as he began to jog forward once more while loading another 4 shells into the chamber. As he jogged forward, though, he heard the commotion ahead of him and looked up to see one of those big armored bastards come around the corner. Oh shit! In the background, he heard the song come to an end. Moving quickly, he rolled forward, messing up the armored Bork's targeting solution as he scrolled through the playlist on his implant. He jumped up near the mech's feet, spinning around it as a new song began. Well, everybody's heard about the bird. Then he jumped onto the thing's back, grabbing a handhold near the top, before using his free hand to smash the butt of his shotgun against the small hatch he saw. The Bork was twisting left and right and spinning around to try and send him off, but Billy Bob was having none of it. Once he smashed the hatch open, he grabbed a handful of wires inside and ripped them out. As they sparked and hissed, he dropped free, and the metal-encased Bork dropped to the ground, the arms twitching as they tried to get back on his feet. With the threat negated for the moment, Billy Bob turned to see 4 more Borks standing behind him. Of course, the mech wasn't alone. Shit! He jumped to the side as they began to fire. Their targeting computers needed precious seconds to adjust as his stronger legs pushed him up beyond the expected range of a standard Xeno. It seemed like he had another advantage being an unknown Xeno to the Xenos. Rolling behind the stalls and cars that were exploding into showers of junk and flying clothes, and he could swear at chicken feathers. The problem for the Xenos was that he was only about 20 yards away, and he had a Remington. He stopped trying to find a good place to aim from, and instead just worked the muzzle in their vague direction before pulling the trigger. These Borks weren't any smarter than the last lot, standing out in the open with the assumption their shields would work. Instead, they were shredded one at a time, the last of them turning and running in the direction they'd come from. B-Robbo let this one run, however. He slung his shotgun and pulled out his handgun and took a wide stance. As it neared the next junction, it looked left. He's killed the others. He's unstoppable. Then he pulled the trigger. Sure enough, that fecker's head seemed to vanish in a red mist as the body dropped to the ground. When Serpent Bird ended, he quickly scrolled down to the playlist. The music started as he began to walk that way, reloading his weapon. Ooh, let's go. Steve walks down the street with the brim pulled way down low. Ain't no sound but the sound of his feet. Machines ready to go. All hail Queen, he muttered. Time to get to work. And so ends another chapter in the adventures of
B-Robbo, Space Striker.
I would just like to thank the T5 supporters: Bushmaster 117, Casper Arnholtz, Dragzoon W.R.E, Elijah Silvercross, Gray, Jon Creighton, and Sevaren Serberous. Thank you very much.